A piece of fruit falls from a tree. Nothing dramatic. No thunder. No violence. No sign that anything important has happened. It lands in the warm undergrowth of an ancient African forest and slowly begins to rot. Days pass. The skin softens. Microbes invade. Sugars break apart. And something invisible begins to appear. Alcohol. Not much, just enough to change the chemistry of the fruit, just enough to create a scent that drifts through the humid air. And somewhere in that forest, a primate notices. Not because it wants to get drunk, because it wants to survive. Most people think alcohol is a human invention, a product of civilization, created when farmers learned to ferment grain and store food. That is not what happened. Alcohol is far older than civilization, older than agriculture, older than cities, older than written language. The story of alcohol did not begin in a brewery. It began in a rainforest millions of years before the first human ever existed. Imagine a forest 20 million years ago. The canopy stretches endlessly overhead. The ground is dark, dense, and competitive. Food is everywhere, yet food is never guaranteed. Every day is a search. Every meal a small victory against starvation. For the animals living here, finding calories is not a convenience. It is the difference between survival and extinction. Researchers studying tropical forests discovered something curious. As fruit ripens, it releases chemical signals into the air. Tiny messages carried by the wind. Fermented fruit releases an additional clue: ethanol, alcohol, a scent that can travel through dense vegetation and act almost like a beacon. To a hungry animal, that smell is not a warning. It is a promise, because where there is fermentation, there is often sugar. And in nature, sugar is concentrated energy. Suddenly, alcohol begins to look less like a recreational substance and more like an evolutionary signpost, a chemical arrow pointing toward calories, opportunity, and survival. But the deeper scientists looked, the stranger the story became. For decades, researchers assumed animals generally avoided alcohol. The assumption seemed obvious. Alcohol impairs judgment, slows reactions, and reduces coordination. In the wild, those mistakes can be fatal, but nature rarely follows human assumptions. Biologists began documenting birds eating fermented berries, elephants consuming naturally fermented fruit, and monkeys seeking overripe fruit containing measurable levels of ethanol. The pattern appeared again and again across different species and different continents. At first, these observations seemed insignificant, interesting curiosities, nothing more. Then researchers noticed something unexpected. Many of these animals were not merely tolerating alcohol. They appeared adapted to it. And adaptation is evolution's fingerprint. It suggests a history stretching far deeper than anyone imagined. In 2014, evolutionary biologist Robert Dudley proposed what became known as the Drunken Monkey Hypothesis. The idea sounded almost absurd at first. Yet the logic was surprisingly simple. Ancient primates that could detect and metabolize small amounts of alcohol gained an advantage. They were better at locating ripe fruit, better at finding calories, better at surviving periods of scarcity. Generation after generation, natural selection favored individuals whose bodies could process ethanol more efficiently. The attraction came first. The intoxication was merely a side effect. And side effects have a way of becoming destinies. Then came a discovery that made the theory even harder to ignore. Researchers examining the genetics of alcohol metabolism found evidence of a mutation in one of our primate ancestors around 10 million years ago. This mutation dramatically increased the body's ability to process ethanol efficiently. Scientists still debate exactly why it evolved, but the timing is difficult to dismiss. Around this same period, ancestral apes appear to have spent more time on the forest floor, where fallen and fermenting fruit was abundant. Evolution had upgraded the machinery precisely when alcohol-rich food may have become increasingly important. But evolution was not preparing for breweries, vineyards, or distilleries. It was solving a survival problem. What happened next was something evolution could never predict. Humans did not simply encounter alcohol. We amplified it, refined it, industrialized it. We turned it into ritual, religion, commerce, celebration, and escape. Most species stop at fermentation. Humans built civilizations around it. Ancient farmers discovered that grain could become beer. Grapes could become wine. Honey could become mead. Entire communities gathered around substances capable of altering perception itself. At first glance, this seems irrational. Why would a species intentionally consume something that weakens judgment? But humans rarely pursue chemicals for the chemicals themselves. They pursue what those chemicals do to consciousness. The human brain is an extraordinary machine. It constantly predicts threats, calculates risks, replays memories, and simulates possible futures. Millions of years ago, this ability improved survival. Today, it often traps us inside our own thoughts. Alcohol interacts with this machinery in a peculiar way. For a brief moment, some of the noise quiets. The internal narrator softens. The future retreats. The present expands. For a species burdened by self-awareness, that experience can feel profoundly attractive. And this is where an evolutionary adaptation begins to blur into something darker. The same mechanism that once guided our ancestors toward food now exists inside a world overflowing with abundance. Evolution optimized us for scarcity. Modern civilization delivers excess. The result is a mismatch repeated throughout human history. Cravings designed for survival become vulnerabilities in environments they were never meant to inhabit. Sugar, fat, status, novelty, alcohol. The ancient signal remains, but the environment has changed. What once appeared occasionally on the forest floor can now be manufactured endlessly. The attraction survives. The limits disappear. Perhaps that is the strangest part of the story. Alcohol is often framed as a moral issue, a cultural issue, or a personal choice. But beneath all those layers lies something older. A thread stretching backward through millions of years, through forests and fallen fruit, through forgotten ancestors searching for calories beneath the trees. The molecule itself has barely changed. What changed was us. We became intelligent enough to understand alcohol. Then intelligent enough to produce it in limitless quantities. Then intelligent enough to realize it was changing us in return. And that realization leads to an unsettling possibility. Maybe the history of alcohol is not really the story of a substance. Maybe it is the story of evolution discovering a shortcut into the human mind. A shortcut hidden inside a rotting piece of fruit millions of years ago, waiting patiently in the shadows of an ancient forest. And perhaps every glass raised throughout history still carries a faint echo of that forgotten world. A reminder that beneath our cities, our technology, and our civilization, part of us is still following the scent of fermented fruit drifting through the trees.